Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And today we're going to go back to 1988, talk a little bit about the third album, If I Should Fall from Grace with God, by Celtic punk rock icons, the Pogues. Now, the Pogues formed in 1982 in London, England. The band released their first album, Red Roses for Me, in 1984. And in 1988, the band released their third album, If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Now, my personal relationship with this band began probably in 1994, 1995-ish, when I stumbled upon one of their songs via a compilation CD, which I purchased. I will give you 3 guesses as to which song it was that I originally heard by the Pogues. And the first 2 guesses don't count. If you need more of a hint than that, I will tell you that the compilation I purchased, that I discovered one of their songs on, was a compilation called A New Wave Christmas. Yep, you're right. The first song I discovered by the Pogues was the song Worms. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. It was Fairy Tale of New York. I remember it was around Christmas time, 1994, probably 1995, I would say. I was looking for some Christmas music. I'm not really sure why. I'm not really a big Christmas music person and never really have been. But I stumbled upon this CD in one of my local record stores at the time. It was called A New Wave Christmas. Actually, it turned me on to my all-time favorite Christmas song ever, which I will tell you at a later point in this episode. But it did have the song Fairy Tale of New York, of course, by the Pogues. And when I first heard that song, that was the first time I remember hearing that song. I'm sorry to tell you, if you're a die-hard Pogues fan, and maybe you're tired of that song, but I loved it. I was completely obsessed with it. So much, in fact, that I went out and bought this record on CD, If I Should Fall from Grace with God, right around that time, end of 1995, beginning of maybe 1996, because I was so in love with the song Fairy Tale of New York. I remember thinking to myself, well, if I don't really like anything else by the band, at least I do love that song. Now, at the time, I was not super familiar with Irish music. It was something that wasn't really on my radar. And I really was unaware of anything sort of Celtic punk. Now, remember that I had heard the name the Pogues before hearing that song, but it really didn't mean anything to me at the time. But I went out and I bought this album on CD, and I instantly became just obsessed with this record. I listened to this thing relentlessly, and over the next not very long, I went out and I pretty much purchased the rest of their catalog, and I just became instantly a huge fan. I listened to this band all the time. I listened to them at home. I listened to them in my car. Of course, back in those days, we all had Discmans, so I listened to them on the bus. I listened to them when I was out walking. Any time I could, I listened to this band. I remember at the time, I was working in a bakery. I was a baker. And back where the bakers worked, there was a stereo, and the owner of the bagel shop, the place was called the Bagel Nook in Concord, California. If any of you are familiar with it, it's not there anymore. Well, it's there still, but now the name of it is Sunrise Bagel Cafe. But back in those days when I was baking at the bakery, back where the bakers worked, we had a stereo, and the owner would basically let you listen to whatever music you wanted back there, as long as it was at a volume where it could not be heard up in the front, where he was playing, sort of elevator music for the customers. And I remember I would always be in that back area listening to whatever I wanted to. And it was right around this time I first discovered the Pogues, and man, I was just listening to them nonstop. Every chance I got, I was just obsessed with this band for a while. So much, in fact, that one time he came out of his office and he basically came running right up to me. He's like, "Listen, man, I don't care what you listen to, but I'm getting pretty tired of this soccer music. Can't you change it up a little bit?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry, man." So basically I made it a rule that I wouldn't listen to the soccer music when he was there because he really didn't like it. And actually, he was a pretty good guy. He pretty much let me listen to whatever I wanted back there. So I guess I could at least respect his wishes and spare him some of the, as he called it, soccer music. In 1995, at the Fillmore, I believe it was, 1995 or 1996, I got a chance to see Shane MacGowan live for the first time with the Pogues. I remember at the time it made perfect sense. I mean, my fandom was still relatively new, but he had come to San Francisco. This is what you do. You go see bands that you love whenever they come to town. Now, at the time, I didn't realize what a sort of special treat it was to see Shane MacGowan live. Obviously, especially by that point in his career, he was not touring nearly as much as he was, back in the days with the Pogues. And of course, he was playing with his solo band, the Popes, who I had those records at the time. I still have those records. And I really do love those albums also with the Popes. Now, to me, they can't, touch anything by the Pogues, but I do love those albums. Not quite as much as the stuff he did with the band. But I remember that first time I got to see him in San Francisco. It was a very special night for me. He came out on stage. I was a huge fan at the time. It was pretty much what I was listening to probably the most at that point in time in my life. And I remember he was pretty inebriated when he came out on stage, which I know is sort of par for the course. And I remember that in between songs, when he would try and, make banter, it was very unintelligible. It was kind of like... But once the song started, I remember that he was right on cue. He sounded great. He got all the lyrics right. It kind of reminded me, many years after that, I went and saw Ozzy Osbourne. Now, I'm not comparing Shane MacGowan to Ozzy Osbourne. But I did go see Ozzy live one time, and that was like that. I remember in between songs, Ozzy would really struggle to get out what he was trying to, the point he was trying to get across. But once the song started, he was right on time. He sounded good. It was just, I think at a certain point, that just becomes so programmed in you that you really can't help it. And I remember that Shane MacGowan show in, I think it was 1995 or 1996. I don't remember. It was at the Fillmore in San Francisco. It was really good. Like I said at the time, I guess I didn't really realize what a special, thing it was to get to see him live. Because I didn't get to see him live again until 2007 when the Pogues reunited. I got to see that show up in Seattle. And to this day, that is one of my favorite shows I've ever been to in my entire life. Not only because I love the band so much, but because, the energy of the crowd and just the camaraderie of the people in the audience, the relationship between the band and the audience, the music itself. It was just such an incredible night. That was one of the, like I said, that was one of my favorite shows I ever went to in my entire life. I remember when the band came out, I got a little emotional. I'm not going to lie to you. I think for one reason, just because I was such a huge fan of this band for so long, at this point in time, and for so long it was just thought of that a reunion was just never going to happen. I mean, at a certain point I thought it would be almost as likely for them to dig up Elvis out of the ground, dust him off, and send him on a run of shows than it would be an opportunity to get to see the Pogues live. So I remember the band came out, and I literally almost started crying. I'm not going to lie to you. And it was just one of those shows where, the crowd was singing along and people had their arms around each other. They were dancing. They were drinking, and they were drinking, and they were drinking. Myself included, I lived up to my end of the contract with flying colors. I remember I had probably a 3-day hangover after that show, and I was a pro back in those days. It took a lot to give me a hangover. But I just remember that whole night, I could just feel my smile. Like I said, you didn't really see any fights. You didn't see any really like buffoonery or goonery. It was just such a fun, great night. The crowd was just like one big community. And I have to tell you that the band performed as well as you could ever hope. And Shane just seemed to be in really good spirits. Of course, he was flying pretty high, but the band just seemed to be in good spirits. He was great. Like I said, that was one of the the greatest shows of my entire life. And even now, still to this day, when I think about that night, I think about going to see the Pogues live. It still kind of gives me the chills. As you've probably seen recently, Shane MacGowan, in his sort of current state, is struggling mightily with health issues. His wife, Victoria, recently posted some pictures on her social media platforms, some pictures of him from the hospital. Now, this was, of course, very sort of a heartbreaking thing to see, because he is the Pogues are easily one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time. He is one of my favorite songwriters in the history of music. He is one of my heroes. And to see him in such a sad state was quite heartbreaking. Now, I'm not going to tell a spouse how they should handle the prospect of losing their partner. I know for me, the thought of losing my wife is one of the scariest things it's probably my biggest fear. I don't think I can imagine anything scarier. So I'm not going to tell Victoria Clark how to handle the situation. It's not my place, far be it from me. But I did not like really seeing those pictures recently that she posted on social media. I always picture Shane MacGowan as being very proud and having a sort of a quiet dignity about him. And I felt that her posting those pictures online was somewhat distasteful. Like I said, I'm not going to tell her how to handle her situation with her spouse. It reminds me of a situation I was put in about 10 years ago, I guess. Somebody very close to me, somebody who was a very proud man and lived his life with a very quiet dignity, was slowly passing away. And as he lay, peacefully on his deathbed, somebody in our family went up and took a bunch of snapshots of him. And of course, threw them all up over the internet, because you can't have anything private anymore. And it really bothered me that was done. It's something that I still struggle with to this day, only because I knew that man, and he was a very proud person. That's sort of how I picture Shane MacGowan. So when his wife posted those pictures recently, it sort of struck a chord with me. I didn't really like it. Like I said, I'm not going to tell her how to manage her grief or her potential grief. Like I said, losing my wife is probably one of my biggest fears ever. It is my biggest fear. As of a couple days ago, though, recently, Shane MacGowan was released from the hospital, so I don't know if we should take that as a good sign or a bad sign, but here's to hoping that Shane MacGowan gets better. Now, obviously, I wouldn't expect him to come back in any sort of professional manner, but let's just hope that his health is improving. It shows you the injustice of the world and what a morbid sense of humor God has, as it feels like we are sort of on the brink of possibly losing Shane MacGowan. Yet, Nikki Sixx is probably at home, peacefully writing another album and planning another stadium tour. Not funny, man! Anyway, if I had to describe the Pogues basically in just a couple sentences to somebody who is unfamiliar with the band or somebody who's kind of starting to get interested in listening to the band, I would say if you took a group of the world's finest musicians, combined it with one of the greatest singers and songwriters of his or any generation, throw in a pinch of morbidity, and of course a barrel of Irish whiskey, you've got the Pogues. Easily one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time. Let's get into this record just a little bit. I've wasted enough of your time already. This record came out in 1988. It was produced by Steve Lillywhite. Steve Lillywhite is a producer that I really love. He has worked with Morrissey on several occasions. He's worked with everybody. He is a heavyweight. I talked a little bit on my last episode when I was talking about Southpaw Grammar, the Morrissey record. I did not like the production on that album. That album, to me, is the exception rather than the rule. I love Steve Lillywhite. I love the production on this record. I love how this record sounds. I just love everything about this record. Like I said, I don't know that this is necessarily my favorite Pogues record. I mean, it would, if it's not my favorite, it's my second favorite. I think my favorite is Rum Sodomy and the Lash. This is probably my second favorite. This was the first record I ever owned, like I said, because of Fairy Tale of New York. I apologize. I love the album cover. I remember when I bought this record at the time, before I really knew much about, the band or what they sounded like, apart from Fairy Tale of New York. I remember that I felt like this album cover was very highbrow. I don't know that I necessarily think that now, but I do love this album. The album starts off with the title track, If I Should Fall from Grace. This is one of the greatest lyrical masterpieces of all time. As somebody who loves to read and loves language, Shane MacGowan's words just reach into your soul. It's one thing if you just put on a Pogues record just to have it on in the background. It's music, but when you sit down and you really listen to it or you follow along with the lyrics, genius isn't even a strong enough word to describe, Shane MacGowan. In a way, it makes you almost hate him because it comes across as so effortless. You get the feeling that this is a guy who could scratch down something on a bar napkin with his fingernail, and it would just absolutely melt your face, and he would be like, yeah, that's garbage, throw it away, and you're over there crying in the corner. The next song is Turkish Song of the Damned, and another lyrical masterpiece, one of the most perfect songs on the record. It's going to get real repetitive on this episode because the writing and the music on this record is amazing. I've always loved the Turkish Song of the Damned. The next song is Bottle of Smoke, another just lyrical and musical masterpiece. And who doesn't love a song about, drinking and gambling? The next song is the aforementioned Fairy Tale of New York. Now, before you throw your slings and arrows at me, just let me say that this is still, this may be one of the most, overplayed songs in the history of the world, especially heading into the Christmas season like we are right now. But to me, this is still one of the most beautiful, perfect songs ever written. I never get tired of it. As this being the song that kind of turned me on to the band, it's got a sentimental place for me. Again, Kirsty MacColl, her vocals on it are absolutely amazing. Like I said, it may be overplayed, but it is still probably my second favorite Christmas song of all time. I first discovered this song, of course, as I said, on that CD compilation I bought, A New Wave Christmas. And the other song that I discovered on it, which is my favorite Christmas song of all time, was Christmas Catalog by Captain Sensible, was on the same CD. And that alone was worth the $6 or $7 I paid for it. But I still love Fairy Tale of New York. Sorry! The next song is Metropolis. It's just an instrumental. And I don't mean just instrumental, because it is amazing. It is beautiful. It's one of the better songs on the record, but it is an instrumental. And I never get tired of it. There's really very little on this album I don't like at all. And Metropolis is awesome. The next song, the side one, ends with the song Thousands Are Sailing. This was a song that was written by Phil Chevron about Irish immigration. Now, on my mom's side of the family, we are Irish, so whenever I hear this song, it makes me think of those ancestors of mine as they left Ireland and headed to the United States. It's one of my favorite songs. It might actually be my favorite song on the album, written by Phil Chevron. According to what he said about the song isn't anti-Irish immigration. It's not anti-people leaving Ireland. But really what the song is about is, people leaving and then just being homesick for their homeland. It's a beautiful song. One of my favorite songs on the record. Might be my favorite song on the record. Phil Chevron. Just beautiful lyrics. Great song. Side 2 starts with the one song off this album I really don't like. I never have. I don't like the studio version of it. I don't like it live. There's just something about the song Fiesta that just grates at me for some reason. I think for me this song is like an audio seizure. There's just way too much going on. I remember when I saw the Pogues live in Seattle in 2007, I believe this was the very last song they played. It was just chaos. I've just never liked the song. It's just too much going on. My wife is a fan of the band Gogol Bordello. It's a band that I could sort of take or leave. Honestly, I'm not really that into them. But one of my big complaints about Gogol Bordello musically is it's just too much. It's just it's too much chaos going on all around you all at the same time. And that's how I feel about the song Fiesta. I just never liked it. Sorry, Shane. I love you, brother. The next song is a song called Medley. This is a medley of 3 traditional Irish songs. The songs are Recruiting Sergeant, of course, Rocky Road to Dublin, and Galway Races. I love this song. I love the way the songs melt together. Instrumentally, this is one of my favorite songs on the record. I love how they kind of do Rocky Road to Dublin instrumentally. Man, that one is just amazing. The next song is Streets of Sorrow, Birmingham 6. This is one of my favorite songs on the record. I love the beginning of it. I love the Streets of Sorrow part. It is very dark. It's very depressing. It's very gloomy. It's very sad. And then the song sort of goes into Birmingham 6, which is very upbeat, sort of angry, loud, up-tempo. The song Birmingham 6, of course, is about 6 Irishmen who were convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment for the Birmingham pub bombing that killed 21 people in 1974. Those Birmingham 6 have since been released and acquitted of all charges. Now, this song is very much a sort of a reprimand or a reaction to not only Britain, but the British police, the British justice system. It's a very scathing, angry, pissed off song. I get the feeling that having Shane MacGowan pissed off at you is not a place you really want to be. The next song is Lullaby of London. I love this song. This song makes you feel lonely a little bit. You know, it talks about, you know, for me, this song, it's very lonely, but you know, one thing it reminds me of is when I've got a lot of shit going on in my head, a lot of stuff I need to like work out going on up here. One of my favorite activities for me is to just go out and just walk, take just a long walk, clear my head, listen to music, listen to a podcast, or listen to nothing at all. And that's what this song reminds me of. It reminds me of, you know, feeling that, you know, that need to like work things out, get out of the house, and I just really love that song. The next song is Sit Down by the Fire. I love this song. It's sort of a bedtime lullaby. Nothing quite like having Shane MacGowan tell you the most disturbing bedtime story and then sending you off to what will probably be an uneasy night of slumber. But I love the song Sit Down by the Fire. Again, it's got the morbidity. It's got Shane MacGowan's just incredible writing, great instrumentation on that song. The next song is The Broad Majestic Shannon. I think this song is basically just a love song to the idea of being Irish. It's a love song to Irish heritage. Just basically what it means to be Irish. It is a very cool song, a very upbeat song. One of my favorite songs on the record. And the album ends with the song Worms, which is just a short little, sort of almost like a novelty song. I'm not really sure what the song Worms is all about. But man, I really love this record. Like I said, this was the record that first turned me on to the band back when I heard Fairy Tale of New York on a Christmas compilation. Sorry to tell you that. I don't really know what else to say. A couple other things I would like to recommend in the Pogues / Shane MacGowan media universe. You've probably seen this. This is the documentary If I Should Fall from Grace. I love this movie. Now, they recently made another Shane MacGowan documentary. I believe it was called Crock of Gold. But I actually like this one much better. This is when he was out touring and playing shows with the Popes. That was the first time I saw him. I really love this movie. Now, he's not necessarily in the greatest shape in this movie. Not that he ever really has been, but I would definitely check out that if you haven't seen it. A couple books I would like to recommend is this one, A Drink with Shane MacGowan, by Shane and his wife, Victoria Clark. This is a fun book. This is a very intimate look at Shane and his wife. And then this book, Here Comes Everybody, The Story of the Pogues. This is actually one of my favorite music bios. I realize I probably say that about all of them. But it's a really good look inside of the band, the history of the band, of course, and going into the first breakup and everything like that. Anyway, man, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure and go out and support your local record store. Listen to If I Should Fall from Grace with God, Red Roses for Me, Rum Sodomy and the Lash, anything by Shane MacGowan or the Pogues, or Shane MacGowan and the Popes, for that matter. Be sure to check back every week on this channel for Morrissey Monday, my weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, and other record content throughout the week. And until next time, my friends, we'll talk to you then.